time. Johnny Juzang, 25 points, was awesome. There was a stretch, by the way, where it certainly, I know it wasn't this exact number. It felt like the teams made a combined 14 straight baskets in the second half. Just the kind of thing, and it's one of these double-edged swords. We don't need to get into, again, why the game was on when it was on. It's other contracts with other leagues and other sports. College basketball in November is not going to take high priority. That's why the game was on so late. It's unfortunate because if this game was played at, say, a Wednesday and this is at 10 o'clock at night or whatever, man, what a wonderful advertisement to how much fun and efficient and entertaining college basketball can be during the regular season. They were incredible back and forth with all this stuff. And this was after UCLA looked good early. Nova actually went stronger late. In fact, if you go to the Ken Pom box score, it breaks it down by quarters, and it actually went like this. UCLA won the first 10 minutes 17-8. Then Nova won the next 10, 22-15 coming out of the second half. Nova won 27-18, and then down the stretch to get it to OT, UCLA outscored them 17-10, and then they had 19, and then they had 19 points in the 5-minute bonus to Nova's just 10 there. And it was awesome. I thought Jules Bernard had a wonderful game. He's the guy we never talk about on UCLA. He had 16 on top of Juzang's 25. Jaime Jaquez had 21 on top of, 13 boards, 3 dimes there. Tiger Campbell had his moments. I talked about how Gonzaga showing up against Texas the way it did, I thought was important coming off of the loss against Baylor. For UCLA, that's the other team that was highly rated going into the season with a bit more bona fides after what it did. But podcast listeners know we talked about why that might not necessarily be the case. After all, that was an 11 seed going into the NCAA tournament. It found fire and made it all the way to the Final Four. Hell of a win over another Villanova looked undersized. And in some of the ways that Texas didn't have the size to match up with Timmy, that was kind of the same deal here with Nova. Now, they overcame it as much as they possibly could. Jermaine Samuels had 20. Colin Gillespie had 18. Justin Moore, who is the best post player as a guard in the sport, I think by far. He'll post you to death. Nova did that a lot with UCLA. They just didn't quite have enough. Both teams scored more than a point per possession, which was huge. And they combined for 23s from beyond the arc there. So what do you want me to say? Wonderful win for UCLA to get that at home, validate that preseason number 2 ranking. It also helps set up, hopefully, for when the Gonzaga UCLA game happens in less than 2 weeks. That will be a number 1 versus number 2 matchup, which we get every so often. It's not super rare, but yeah, come on now. Game of the weekend was awesome. It's unfortunate it ended almost at 2 a.m. on the East Coast there. I was fortunate enough to be watching it on the West Coast when it wasn't brutally late, but it was still late. And oh, by the way, last thing, and then it's all yours. I love that Mick Cronin rocked the suit. If you want to wear the suit, that was one thing one of the Texans assistants were saying. They're like, wait a second, you got Jay Wright in this game not going with a suit. Mick Cronin's going. Like, it's kind of like, whoa, what are we doing? I love it. If you want to wear the suit, coaches, I think it's a good look. If you want to go casual, I got nothing against that, but I like the suit look, and I like Mick Cronin really going against the grain here, while most other coaches, as we're still technically in the dumbest pandemic of our lifetimes, are going the casual look. Mick Cronin rocks the suit and gets the win. I don't think that's a coincidence.
I feel like Mick heard Jay say that they're going casual this season, and he was like, this might be my one opportunity to outdress Jay Wright on television.
That's right.
I'm just going to take advantage of it. And he did look good. He looked good.
Whole staff did. You're right.
You mentioned Justin Moore posting up. Like, I feel like they used to do that with Jalen Brunson all the time too. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, you are. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I remember Brunson being really good scoring, down there on the block, which was always interesting, given that he was a small point guard. Juzang was not terrible, but like inefficient in the first half.
1 of 9, I think. So if you want to define him as terrible in that first 20 minutes, I think that's fair.
And then he just got going and was making shots from everywhere. And like you said, finishes with 25 points, 8 rebounds, looked like an All-American. And I guess if we want to rope these things in together, late Friday night, we watch UCLA. Late Saturday night, we watch Gonzaga. Those two teams were number 1 and number 2 in the AP poll. But more than that, number 1 and number 2, literally the entire offseason in the top 25 and 1. When I first published the top 25 and 1, the night of the national championship game, I had UCLA 1 and Gonzaga 2. If you remember, it was just because I was like, I can't make Gonzaga number 1 again right now. They just got blasted by Baylor. So I went UCLA 1, Gonzaga 2. And then Gonzaga added Bolton and they added Nolan Hickman. And it was just like, at some point, you just got to, pull away from the title game and just forget it and base what you're doing on what they're going to have on their roster. And that looked like the number one team in the country. So then I flip-flopped it. Gonzaga won. I think version 10.0 is when I went Gonzaga 1, UCLA 2, and it stayed that way the entire offseason. And here we are, first week of the season, and they both got top 5 wins. Now they played home games. You know, if they'd have been the ones on the road, maybe it goes differently, although I doubt it for Gonzaga. Probably for UCLA. It was an overtime game. It was an overtime game that, you know, Villanova was up 10 with 9 minutes to go. And Villanova had the ball, shot clock off, tied at the end of regulation. You know, that game could have easily gone the other direction. But, you know, this is the way we decide things. Games go, you know, however you win it, you win it. However you lose it, you lose it. And here we are on the first Monday of the regular season. And the Zags and Bruins had the 2 best wins in the sport.